So hello guys, I've ported Gnash to several platforms, the Funkey first, then the LGK, and finally also OpenDingux devices, so the ones that use the Nginx JZ 4770 SoC, so CPU, the one that clocked at 1 GHz. And I've also ported just for fun to the RG-99, but it's not really playable on that one. You will see why. But let's start with the GameKD Mini. Now the GameKD Mini is actually the same hardware as the GameKD 350H, so it is the new Nginx SoC, which means no GPU but a much faster CPU. So you will see what I mean by now. Right, so Gnash, and just to show you first, I'll play Ultimate Sonic because that was a game that was known to be slow on the Funkey, and the reason why is simply because of lack of RAM, so it is constantly swapping in and out from memory, but also because the rendering is actually quite heavy on the CPU. And it's not really accelerated on the Funkey, despite the fact it has neon extensions, and this one does not. This CPU can just push integers much faster. So, oops, yeah. And as you can see, it's almost very close to 60 FPS. But despite that, it's still playable. There are still some freezes here and there because of the lack of memory. This console only has 128 megabytes of RAM, and unfortunately a lot of flash games go above that, so that's why it can still happen. But enough about that game, it runs fine. Another game that runs much slower is Tales of Fantasia, and now this one is actually smooth when, well, it seems smooth at a first glance, but once you try to, here we go, the scrolling thing effect just makes everything slow, because on the Funkey this will be much slower. Here's Final Fantasy Sonic, and it can't play the intro, by the way. And even though the Funkey could also play this game, here it's also much smoother. Because notice how smooth it is when I attack. The audio is almost in sync with the animation, which indicates that it is almost close to perfect. So, Alien Hominid, which is the prototype Flash version that was released a while back, and it was quite popular for some time, but it was eventually released for the GBA and, as you can see, the PS2 and Xbox. It's very smooth. There are some freezes sometimes, and the freezes are again because of the RAM, but otherwise it runs perfect. And it's also probably the only console that I own that can play Super Smash Flash, and it does run it almost okay, but yeah. Now it still freezes because, again, this game actually consumes around 200 megabytes of RAM, but because this console has plenty of swap space set up, it can handle the game mostly okay. But I would like to see a successor with X-Burst 2 and double the memory amount. So please do that. Freeze RAM again. And another issue is the lack of IPU on those devices, and unfortunately that causes an issue because grabbing that cursor is much harder because of that, because it actually uses the resolution of the host device instead of the resolution of the virtual resolution. So that makes it less precise to grab this cursor, and that's much more difficult because the collision zone for that cursor is quite small. And this level is very slow. In fact, even back then it was very slow. I remember at the time I had a Pentium 2 and this level would struggle like very hard. So it runs about the same as it would on the Pentium 2 with the official Adobe Flash interpreter. Okay, Knuckles is dead. Good. Alright. Mario should die on its own. We just need to stay here and just sit there. Eventually it will just die. And Samus will also die, but whatever. That's a common trick that I know since the first time I've actually played that game. Target practice runs pretty good. But enough about the GKD Mini. As you can see, it runs fine. I'm expecting minor improvements, but not a lot of them. So let me show you what games actually improved, because what I actually did on Gnash was completely revamp the whole thing. So I'm using now my own makefile and I PGO'd the hell out of it. So Gnash, we are going to play how about Tales of Fantasia, just to show you the difference. Not just in memory, but in CPU performance. And this is so lame. I don't know how to play that game actually. And then the scrolling, oh my god, it is sluggish. Yeah, you get the idea. Now, I did find some games that run smoothly on it. This one is almost perfect, except for the fact that it would use a frame rate of like 50 FPS. So it would run fine, but the cursor speed would also be assume it would normally assume a speed of 30 FPS, but instead the speed is halved. So shooting those damn Pokemons is much harder because the cursor is slower. But in general, you shouldn't be playing those kinds of games on the Funkey because it's just so much harder. There you go, one shot. Alright. So that's it for the Funkey. Now, let me show you the RG-280V. I've also ported Gnash to the beta firmware for this device. So here it is. We are going to play actually Super Smash Bros. V1. And unlike the GameKD Mini, this one has quadruple the amount of RAM. So as you can see, there's no freezing when loading data from the game to memory. But the CPU is quite slower on the other hand. However, because the resolution is the original resolution, I can properly grab the cursor of well, almost, because sometimes it will just fall out, but there we go. And look at the timer above. This runs almost twice as slow as the GameKD Mini. I actually forgot to map the buttons on this game, because yes, you can actually map the buttons, but anyway, this game is much slower on this one. Let me show you Ultimate Sonic and how the Funkey should run it, or at least how it would run if it had enough memory. And the menu is not exactly as smooth as the GameKD Mini, but it's close. And as you can see, it's not too bad on this game, but still slower than the GameKid Mini. But yeah, I would say it's twice as slow, or like a third slower. But yeah, so this was the RG-280V. So yeah,